I would say that it starts with me choosing to study accounting in college. That was the great plot twist of my existence. No one who knew me would have expected that because not only was I not great with money, I was so bad at understanding it. No matter how many times people try to teach me the concepts, I just couldn't visualize it. And I felt like people who did understand money didn't know how to explain it to people who didn't. And I always just felt like it was another language. So the fact that I ended up in another business major where I had to take an accounting class, which I was dreading. And then I ended up with an accounting professor who was incredible and helped me to become more interested in it and see the possibility that like maybe I could understand this stuff and learn it. That I think that was just divine planning, but that led me into that field. And it was a challenge, but I studied hard and I kept working at it and I graduated. I got the accounting job. I checked off all the boxes you're supposed to check off. And about a month into that job, I realized I hated it.
Are you ready to streamline your focus and get clarity to start your online service-based business? Are you tired of struggling with lack of clarity, self-doubt, and the fear of being a public failure? Do you wish you had a clear plan you could follow to make your calling a reality? Hey friend, you don't have to stay stuck any longer. With a renewed mindset and a clear plan, you can start a business that fulfills your calling and makes a profit. I'm your host, Chichi Ukomado, a Christian business coach, Jesus follower, and a 7-figure service-based entrepreneur. In this podcast, I'll teach you how to streamline your focus, get clarity on your business idea, create your business launch plan, set up your business essentials, and launch your sustainable and profitable business from scratch. You will get tons of encouragement, godly wisdom, and accountability to grow in your faith and new business journey. It's time to partner with God and take your first step to start that business. You know the one I'm talking about? Yes, that one you've been putting off for a long time. Today, I am excited to have Katie Scott on the podcast. Katie is a personal and business money management teacher. Katie helps online business owners like me and you master personal and business money management with practical and sustainable strategies. Katie empowers entrepreneurs to take control of their money, make better decisions, and thrive financially. Katie, welcome to Start That Business podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat.
I'm excited to have you. You know, I was asking myself, how did I find Katie? I was Googling one day. I think I was looking for money management for online business owners, something along that line. I also love Profit First. So I was just researching about money stuff, and your blog pulled up, and I started reading your blog, and I was just going from one blog to another blog, and I'm like, I love this lady's content. I love the way she talks about money. I love that she's also a Profit First advocate, and just reading everything, it gave me so much joy to know that there's someone out there who also shares the same ideologies around managing money and all the money stuff. So yeah, that's how I found you.
That's so cool. It makes me excited. It makes me think I need to be writing more blog posts. Actually,
Yeah,
it's been a while.
you need to. And after I found you, I have a list where I put like potential podcast guests that I would like to have on my show. And guess what, y'all? I put Katie on that list about a year ago.
That's so fun.
That's how much I wanted you to be here. I put you on that list about a year ago, and I'm so happy that almost a year later you are sitting across from me online and we're having this interview. So the topic we're dealing with today is one that is near and dear to my heart because this podcast, this coaching business is my second service-based business. My first is an e-commerce logistics business, and I made all the money mistakes you can think of. Number one being not paying myself. I actually built that company and found a way to exclude myself from paying myself and just structuring it so that it can take care of me and my family. And now that I'm building this next one, I'm learning from all that mistake. So before we jump into all the nitty gritties of paying yourself, breaking free from toxic pricing, Katie, can you share your journey with us? What led you to become a personal and business money management teacher? Can you share a little bit about your story?
Yeah, so I would say that it starts with me choosing to study accounting in college. That was the great plot twist of my existence. No one who knew me would have expected that because not only was I not great with money, I was so bad at understanding it. No matter how many times people try to teach me the concepts, I just couldn't visualize it. And I felt like people who did understand money didn't know how to explain it to people who didn't. And I always just felt like it was another language. So the fact that I ended up in another business major where I had to take an accounting class, which I was dreading, and then I ended up with an accounting professor who was incredible and helped me to become more interested in it and see the possibility that like maybe I could understand this stuff and learn it. That I think that was just divine planning, but that led me into that field. And it was a challenge, but I studied hard and I kept working at it and I graduated. I got the accounting job. I checked off all of the boxes you're supposed to check off. And about a month into that job, I realized I hated it.
Wow.
So yeah, it was accounting, public accounting especially, is very different from the textbook accounting you do in school. I loved the textbook, but the real world stuff just it got so draining. I was overworked and undervalued, some typical story that so many people have. But I also just felt like I wasn't actually helping people. And that took me a little while to figure out why. I ended up leaving over a year in, and I stuck through it for as long as I needed to. But I ended up leaving. I quit for different reasons. We were moving and changing things with my husband's career, but I knew that I wasn't going to get another accounting job. But I didn't have much of a plan, and I don't recommend doing that. So I had this business I had started that had zero direction. And so I started trying to focus on, well, I at least have this skill. Let me try to help people with money to some degree. And I realized a couple of things. I realized one, accountants don't actually know how to manage money. It's not something you're taught, right? A lot of people think, well, I'm not like a finance person. I don't know how to do this properly. They don't know either. It's not part of the education with accounting and finance in a business and corporate setting. They think they do a lot of times. And I'm speaking badly about accountants. There are fantastic accountants out there. I'm not hating on accountants. But there's a lot of them who are a little bit delusional about how good they are with money just because they have an accountant label. Um, and that's just something people don't realize, but it's true. And so I realized that I still, despite all of that, I still didn't know how to actually manage my money. And the other piece was that that was part of the reason I didn't feel like I was helping people when I was in the accounting job. You know, we do the bookkeeping a month or multiple months after the fact for people, send them a profit and loss report and tell them, hey, you did good, or hey, it's a loss. And then what changed, right? A lot of times nothing would change. And unless they paid a lot of money, the accountants like that I worked for and very common in the traditional accounting space, they're not going to do much else to help you. They're just going to tell you, hey, try to be more profitable next month. And it doesn't help people. And so I realized, again, there are exceptions to that rule, by the way, but I realized that what I wanted to help people with was the proactive stuff, the money management, decision making, and behavior and mindset that happened before you ever swiped the card, not just generating a financial report a month or longer after the fact. And so that's where I started to find my niche. And that is a gross oversimplification of what that journey has looked like. I stumbled around a lot. I offered things I didn't want to offer. I tried to do freelance bookkeeping and realized I still hated it. You know, there's a whole lot of messy stuff, but that's ultimately how I ended up to where I am now, was just realizing that that was how I wanted to help people. So yeah.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that story. You know, when you said accountants don't actually know how to manage money, I started laughing. I'm like, everyone goes to accountants thinking, oh, they should be able to know how to manage money, but just sharing it from you that is in the accounting field, it gives us a lot to think about. And I like that you were able to transition to finding your niche because you said, I really wanted to help people. That was what was behind the heart for transitioning. And I always say, until you find that thing that gives you fulfillment, everything else you're trying to do will just be you chasing the wind. But once you find that core thing that you've been called to do and you start doing it, it just clicks. You might fumble in it, like you said, but as long as you keep at it, you learn the ropes and you come to a place where you are now thriving in that space. Thank you so much for sharing your story. So why is it so important for service-based business owners to prioritize paying themselves, especially when they're transitioning from a corporate career to starting a business? Like, why should they focus on that and managing their money?
Yeah. So, what I'll first do is I would define what we mean by paying yourself. There's the obvious and the big piece, and that's paying yourself a paycheck that's going to meet your personal financial goals and needs. Um, Whatever that looks like for you and your family, like that is a huge part of it. But there's another layer that people often forget to factor in, which is part of why you then end up never really going anywhere with your financial journey. And you need to view paying yourself as also reinvesting in yourself and in your business so that ultimately your money is growing, so that your wealth is growing. What a lot of people don't realize is that they think about wealth as the ability to spend money. Like, if I'm wealthy, then I have money, I can buy what I want, I can pay for what I need. But that's not really what wealth is. And people who think about it that way either don't attain it or they can't keep it. Wealth is about the accumulation of your assets, with that being the things that you own that have value. It's about having those things, and that creates a net worth for yourself and for your family and for your future and for your business. So in your personal life, that looks like, yes, building your savings, having cash on hand so that you have that spending power when you need it or when you want it. But it also means investing your money in vehicles that help to contribute to your net worth. So the obvious ones that most people know of is the stock market. Maybe you have real estate, whether it's just your own primary residence that you live in, or if you have other properties that you try to invest in one day. Also investing more directly in businesses, not just through the stock market, which in our case looks like your own business. Growing your own business is a part of adding to your net worth. It's something that brings value to your own life and your financial situation. Legally and tax wise, they view that as something that is an asset of yours. So that's part of it. From the business side, again, building some type of savings, having cash flow, because cash gives you power and opportunity, not in a negative sense, but just the ability to do things that you need to do. But also creating systems in your business to ensure that you are continually earning profit, that you're structuring your business operationally in a way that it's sustainable and scalable so that it grows, not necessarily when you're trading time for money, but that the money is growing in a way that is going to add, again, value to the business and then ultimately to you. So that feels like a really big picture thing. It feels probably very overwhelming to someone who's not doing it, but that needs to be your end game objective. That needs to be what you're working toward, and what you're aspiring toward. Because otherwise, to answer your question, when you're not meeting your basic personal financial needs and you're not working towards true financial freedom and independence through your business, you're just swapping your corporate chains for entrepreneurial ones. You're still a slave to your next payday. You're still trying to figure out how to, pay the bills or have any type of savings stowed away or whatever. How am I going to ever be able to retire one day? Like, you're still asking yourself those same questions. Plus, you have the challenges and stress of being an entrepreneur, which can sometimes be very exhausting, right? So, your business should be a vehicle for your personal wealth, which is not a selfish mentality to have. It's kind of part of the whole reason that you do it, with the benefit of being able to choose what you do so you can do something meaningful, right? But those things really need to work together. Otherwise, what is it all for is really where I would just leave that at.
Yeah, I like what you said about looking at the big picture, because sometimes we look at paying ourselves as, okay, just taking that paycheck. But you're saying beyond taking the paycheck, make sure that you structure it to where you are investing, you are doing things that actually build wealth for you through your business. So you're not just taking another 9 to 5 that you own and you're working it, and now you're even worse off than you left your corporate job, because at your corporate job you probably had a 401k, you probably had an IRA or something that your employer was contributing to. So as you transition to becoming your own boss, you should also put those systems in place to keep building wealth. So where do you draw the line? Because that was where I struggled. Where do you draw the line with paying yourself and reinvesting into the business to where it doesn't become a minus to you? Because a lot of people, especially in the early stages, will say, okay, I'm not going to pay myself anything. I just want to reinvest into the business, reinvest. How do you balance both to where you're paying yourself, you're building wealth, and you are still reinvesting to where it doesn't become a negative for you?
Yeah. That's where having a good on paper, digital or physical, but preferably digital, on paper system so that you can know what your numbers are, what you're working with, right? So we're not going to say that we're going to put money towards 100 different things if you don't have that money in the first place, right? So you do need to know what your business needs to operate off of. And then you need to know what your personal lifestyle needs in order to be sustained, or if you need to make adjustments to either of those things. It's something where it feels like a lot of different pieces, and you have to bring them together into some type of plan or system so that you can see it. And then you decide how much of a slice of the pie do these different things get? And there will be seasons where you'll spend less in certain areas than others, but it's hard to answer it generally. But that's part of it. Is you have to know what's the baseline, and then what's the ideal, and then you kind of chip away, you take baby steps towards those things. That's where, for at least like with the business, how do I know how much to keep in the business versus how much to pay myself? That's where the profit first system does help a lot.
Yeah.
It even gives you some benchmarks, which I would say those benchmarks are just to give you a rough idea.
Yeah.
You'll ultimately want to customize that, but as just that rough idea with profit first, you're being taught there to take your income and set aside like 1 to 5% for your business's savings. And then 50% of what you earn right off the top goes towards a fund to pay yourself with. And then 30% of your revenue is for your expenses, and 15% for taxes. So like roughly kind of got that. So you can see there's a pretty large priority on paying yourself with that, right?
Yes.
Half of everything you earn is to go towards your salary. And that will work for some people. And for some people, that might be more than they need, or it might be not enough. Like you have to shift around your pie chart a little bit until you land on something that works. Because it's easy to talk about in percentages, and it's a good way to start planning it. But if you're talking about 5% of a dollar of revenue, like that's still not going to help anybody. So the actual dollar amount that it translates to is important. And I say all this, I don't want to overwhelm anyone. So and I think we'll talk about it later, but I have like a spreadsheet resource that will help with actually calculating this. I don't want you to freak out and think like, how am I supposed to know all that? It is something that can be sort of planned out on paper, but that's really, you need to be able to kind of holistically look at things and then start to prioritize your focus. I don't know if I'm answering the question. It's a little messy because we're speaking in generalities, but
You are. That is helpful. And that's one of the reasons why I love the profit first system, because I feel it does what you spoke about, where you talked about paying yourself and looking at the big picture of building wealth. And that's why I really love the profit first system. After I got burnt out financially in my first business, I started looking for a better way. I said, there has to be a better way to run a business and be profitable and be sustainable and not have to go without paying myself or even building wealth. Because for me, I feel like paying yourself is the first step. Because if you're not even paying yourself, then how are you going to save or investment or bring out other stuff? Because you're not even you don't even put yourself on the list in the first place. You pay everyone else, and they are able to start building, and you yourself, the owner, are not even on the list yet. So that was when I found the profit first method, and I saw all the percentages, the different accounts. And I've even done an episode, maybe 2 episodes about profit first, where I go into detail and break down the percentages and how people can start opening those accounts. So I like that you brought that up because it helps bring that balance we're talking about. It helps bring that balance to a large extent. So, what are some common mistakes that you see new entrepreneurs making when it comes to pricing their services? And how can this lead to toxic pricing and where they get into bad money management practices?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because there's a lot of pricing mistakes, but if you're looking for when it becomes a toxic pricing strategy, like what does that really mean, right? Um, for me, toxic pricing is where it becomes a detriment to yourself or others. Obviously, your business is part of that too, but it's pricing can become such a muddy area with the way that we think about ourselves and our the value of what we're offering, and it can become really muddy with your market. So I would say that the two big pitfalls are kind of the obvious ones, right? Underpricing and overpricing, undercharging and overcharging. But what does that really look like, especially when you're talking new entrepreneurs? Most people would say like underpricing is probably the biggest one, and it is. Uh,
Yes.
it it hurts. It definitely hurts your own business, right? Because you're not able to earn that much money. What people don't often think about is it can hurt the people that you want to help as well,
Mhm.
though. It might turn them off of your services where you would be able to help them, but they don't think so because they say that price and they think that can't be that valuable or it's too good to be true. So they might not give you a chance when you could have actually helped them. It could also mean if you need them to be somewhat engaged in the project with you, if they need to be responsive, they need to send feedback, they need to provide you with something for you to do what you're doing, they might not have as much skin in the game if they haven't invested hardly anything with you. It might make it lower on their priority list, and that could drag out the project and make it messy and just make it a pain. So there is a level of benefits to charging a price that's reflective of the value for your audience. But of course, it also hurts you. And I would say one of the biggest ways that it does is it traps you in a cycle of this lowered entrepreneurial self image, right? It's kind of a similar concept to someone who, and I'm speaking, this is an example from my own life of being insecure about what you look like. And so
Mm.
you don't feel like you're worth, dressing in really nice clothes and doing your hair fancy and
Right.
makeup, right? So you kind of dress the part of being, in my case, I always say I dress like a bum. I'm wearing my pajamas literally right now. So I'm dressing like a bum. I feel like a bum. I look like a bum. And you end up in this cycle. And then it's almost like self-validating situation when you could dress it. And if you wanted to look a different way, like you could do that. You might have to take a leap of faith. You might have to fake it till you make it until you realize that you could, but you can get stuck in that cycle. And it's a similar thing with when you're pricing so low, you're undervaluing your own services. So other people are only going to pay a low price and they're not willing to pay a higher price because you're undervaluing and you feel like you can never raise your prices and get out of that. And now you're just stuck in this like sort of again low self-image state. But with that, I'll also add some of us dress casual or quote unquote boring on purpose because that's just what we like and that's what's comfortable and that's fine as well.
No
I'm still in that
judgment.
space. Yeah. Like I said, I'm in my pajamas literally right now and I will not change all day. Uh, but, and that works. That's okay for some people. And I'm doing this because that's what I like, not because of my insecurities in this season of my life. And so, similarly with low prices, there are strategic and valid reasons for having smaller offers and low ticket prices. Um, but you have to be honest with yourself. If is what you're doing pricing low, is that an emotional decision or a strategic decision? And you have to
Right.
ask multiple layers of why. Why am I pricing it this way? Why do I think that? Why do I feel that way? In order to be honest with yourself about it.
Right.
Because you might be trapped in that cycle and you might not even realize it. So that's a big one. The other one that people don't think about as much with new entrepreneurs is the pendulum swing to the high end pricing, to what I call arbitrary high-end pricing, of just charging a premium because someone told you to or because you think you can. And this is because the online business world especially has a lot of messaging around the validity of you as an entrepreneur with you having to charge high ticket prices. Like if you have to charge a premium in order to get good clients, right? Because there aren't good people who are worthy of your help that will pay a low price, right? Like there's just this really toxic messaging around premium pricing. And I believe it comes from a packaging first mentality to offers where you're saying, okay, I want to make X amount of dollars, so I need to have a $10,000 offer. And so these are some features that a $10,000 offer will probably have, and that's what I'm going to sell. And that's backwards, right? You're picking your container before you know what needs to go inside of it.
Right.
Whereas if you focus on transformation first, who do I want to help? How am I going to help them? What do they need in order to get that end result? And how can I help them get those things? That should build your offer. Then you know the value of not just the whole offer, but all the different pieces within it. You'll have a much stronger gauge of how valuable your offer is, how intentionally it's been designed. And that will help you to know more about where that price should land. And so now you have something that's value driven, honest in its pricing. And if that ends up being a premium price, then it's fine, but there's a reason for it. It's justified. A quick side story on this. I once had a couple of sessions with a business coach who told me to basically triple my prices on my coaching just because she thought I was undervaluing myself, even though I had never coached anyone before.
Wow.
And I thought that was scary, but she kept pushing me to do it. So I did it. And I sold, I think, 2 coaching packages, which should have been exciting, but I felt horrible about it. I was so nervous. I was so stressed, and I ran myself dry trying to make sure that these people were happy with me because of the price that they paid for. And so I was doing things that were not a part of the original agreement. I was offering services, and I got stuck on a retainer service of something I didn't even want to do for somebody because I just wanted to keep her happy. And I completely compromised the way that I wanted to help people because I had this misaligned high-end pricing. So high prices for the sake of high prices, it's a misalignment in yourself. It creates a new form of insecurity in you that you might not think would exist at that level, but it does. It alienates people in your market who would otherwise need or benefit from your services, the people that you might actually want to help. If you price above their budget, then you're in trouble. And it creates just an unhealthy inflation for similar services in the market. Look at the wedding industry, for example. They charge high just because they can, right? And that's assuming you can even sell the offer at that price, or you can deliver on that price and that it's sustainable in that way. So there's just a lot of consequences on both ends of the spectrum. And I just really encourage entrepreneurs and new entrepreneurs especially to be honest with yourself about your emotions around pricing and your thought process around it, and also be honest about the value of your offer and focus on that first. Focus on making sure you feel really good about what you're doing for people, and the pricing will then become easier. It'll be more symptomatic of that. So yeah, that was a long tangent, but clearly I have some thoughts on the topic.
Thank you so much for that. So she said, focus on your transformation, focus on the transformation you're trying to provide to the people that are going to buy that offer, that are going to buy that service, and start from there. So you start from value that you're going to offer and walk your way up, so that when you're putting the price, it's consistent with who you are, what you want to deliver. You're not bending over backwards to deliver a service, like you said, that you didn't even want to do because you didn't want to offer that service because you were pressured by your coach to triple your prices. So, and there's nothing wrong with a gradual increase of pricing, because some people think, oh, once I put the price, then that's the price forever. No, it doesn't stay that way. As you improve the value on that offer, on that service, you can increase the price. We see businesses all around us increasing their price every day. Even you go to the grocery store, the price of milk, cheese, bread, as things go up, they also go up. So don't be afraid to start with pricing. I actually had a coach, my podcast coach, when I was going through a podcast mastermind program. She said, I don't care how many years of experience you have, start with this price. And a lot of people were fighting with it. They're like, oh, it's too low. She's like, it's not going to be that price forever. But just start with that to get started, to get your leg in the door. Then, as you gain more experience, you can increase the pricing. So, if you're listening, don't get stuck. Weigh the pros and cons, like Katie shared, of both being on the lower end of things and on the higher end of things. I think for first time entrepreneurs, they fall more on the lower end of things because they're like, oh, I'm new, I don't have an experience yet. And they go and really underprice, and it leads to burnout and resentment in offering the service because you're showing up in all your glory and you're charging $1 for your services. So I like what you shared about repelling people that could work with you because you're priced too low. And they feel maybe this person is not as valuable. So finding that middle point that sits right with who you are, how you want to offer the service, and just showing up to do the thing will be very helpful. All right, Katie. I was going to ask some more questions on the profit first method. I know you shared the percentages around that profit first, but how can someone using the profit first method come up with a pricing structure? How can I create a pricing structure that will actually be profitable? Is there a method to that madness, or do I just guess or price based on what people in the industry are doing? Is there a method? Is there a way that I can create a profitable offer or profitable service right from the get-go?
Right. So when you're talking about a service, you have a lot more flexibility, right? When you're selling a product, you have to factor in the cost of the goods of, for making that product and all of that. So there's a lot more mathematical side to it. But when you're talking about a service, it's usually like labor hours and maybe a few things that might factor in as far as dollar amount cost. So as long as you're at least covering that, like you're somewhere there. But again, you do need to also know the rest of the cost of doing business. So you need to know how much does it cost you on a monthly basis approximately to run your business. You need to make sure that your combined offers and the amount that you sell them is helping you to cover that cost. So
Right.
there's that level of math that needs to be involved. As far as how do you actually go about pricing, though, my recommendation is probably not the accountant's path. If you couldn't tell, I kind of deviate a little bit from accountants, but with figuring out how you should price. Again, transformation first, that really helps. It gives you a baseline. You need to know what the offer is and what it's going to do. You need to be able to articulate and define all the different benefits that people are going to get from your offer, the intangible benefits and the tangible ones. So, what's the actual deliverable, but also what is this going to do for their life or their business? And what is the value of that, right? So, you need to be able to articulate that to at least some extent so that, again, you know the value of your offer and you feel confident in it. And doing that as well, it's going to help you on your sales calls. So, that's just an added bonus. But I would also say, like, when you have a pretty good handle on what the offer is, do some market research, like you mentioned, like take a look at what else is out there. You might have to be creative and you might have to look at things that aren't exactly the same or to the exact same market, but there are things that are similar to what you're doing. And that should not make you freak out. The internet is a very big place. But it should help you to see what else is out there. And industry research is very, very powerful. It's very undervalued, but it's very powerful. It's helpful to look at those things and just get an idea for what other people are doing. But that is to give you context. That is not your decision on what you're going to price your offers at, because there are so many other variables behind the scenes of their business that factored into that pricing that might not apply to yours. So
Right.
just for context, I would also say do market research within your own field. So if you have an audience, or at least you have connections with people who are close to or are your ideal client, ask them. Either reach out directly or put out a survey with a chance to win a gift card. If they respond, they get to enter it into a drawing or something. My favorite way to do a market research survey about and to try and get this information is to give them information about the transformation, about the offer, and ask them what they think it's worth. Not how much would
Mm,
you pay for it, but what do you think this is worth? And you're going to get some really interesting feedback, I think, from that. So that kind of market research, industry research can be very helpful, again, for context. So we talked about the value of the offer itself. We talked about doing industry and market research, and also taking a look at it in the context of your business. What kind of revenue will this bring into your business? And is that enough when you also factor in whatever other offers you have? So you kind of have to look at all of those different pieces, which takes a little bit of sitting down with some blank documents and just hashing it all out and making some sense of it. When you do that, you should have a range, a rough range. Like at that point, you should know whether you're talking about a $500 or a $5,000 offer, right?
yeah.
When you have that range, here's where the accountants are going to freak out. I say go with your gut. Go with your gut on that point. If I know that, okay, so I'm talking about $1,000-ish offer. Okay. What number sounds good from there? I like the number 1,200. Cool. Or maybe I like the number 950. Cool. Go with that, right? If you can say it out loud without completely shriveling up into yourself, then go with that as your starting point, because you want to be able to present it to people and you want to feel confident when you're trying to sell it. So it has to be a feel good number to some extent, but it's informed by all that other background work that you did on the context, right? So you know
Right.
that you're in the ballpark. And then if you need to adjust from there, you can. But that will at least get you somewhere to start. Um, but yeah, honestly, go with your gut on it. Um, I help people sometimes with pricing, like online courses and stuff. Those can be such a wide range, and that's
Wow.
what we do is we try to narrow it into like roughly the range, and then go with what number sounds good in the moment, and
Yeah.
just stick with that.
Wow, that's very, very helpful. I like the piece on the market research where you send a question or send the benefits and everything they will get from the course and ask them, what do you think this is worth? That is a really good one because then you hear from them and you can use the information you get with other research you've done to come up with a number that you think will be good
And if I can
for.
add to that as well, it helps a lot to ask some questions before about their problem that they have, about the desired, solution to that problem for them. What are they looking for? What relief would it bring to them? If they could wave a magic wand and fix this problem, what would that look like? Ask them those
Right.
questions too, because one, that's very helpful to you, but also it gets them in the headspace before they answer the question. So
Yes,
I'm
yes.
passionate about market research.
I am too. I actually did an episode on market research, like what you just said, questions you can ask your customers. I'll link it in the podcast description for those who want to go back and listen to that episode and maybe do that research first before you ask about the pricing or combine it into the same pricing. So, Katie, as we wrap up our conversation, what is the first practical step or the next practical step you advise someone to take uh, currently that is not paying themselves or facing some financial inconsistencies in their business? What will be the next action you would tell them to take to start getting back on track with their money management?
It's probably what people don't want to hear, but it's get it out of your head and get it into a system or a piece of paper, a sticky note for all I care. Like you need to get the numbers out of your head. If you don't have something that allows you to do that, that's working for you, that's step one, because that's what's going to empower you to one, fix the way that you think about your money. Because when it's all in your head betrays you on that stuff. It blows it out
Yeah.
of proportion or it helps hides things under the rug, whatever. So it needs to be out of your head. Um, but it also, I lost my train of thought on where I was going with that. But basically, you need to have it based in a way where you can process it in front of you and not within you. Um,
Right.
and it doesn't have to be complicated. This is probably the biggest thing I would want to emphasize. There's a lot of financial teachers out there who get you on a budget system and they tell you, okay, this is all the stuff you need to do in order to prepare. And they'll have you pulling 12 months worth of bank statements and getting a highlighter
Right.
out and or you're pulling out your spreadsheet, creating the log, getting to the penny, the exact amount of money you spent over the last year or longer. Don't do that. That's ridiculous. It's it's more work than it's worth. Like the benefit of that does not outweigh the amount of time and stress that it gives you. I would say if you feel like your situation is simple enough, your statements are reasonable enough, like you can just skim through the last month or 2 months or 3 months of statements and just jot down what you see, jot down the subscriptions that come out every month and when they come out and what comes out. And then as you're noticing categories, like repeat categories of things, jot that down, pull out your phone and just roughly round numbers, get an estimate of how much, whether we're talking you spend $10 a month on this or you spend $100 a month on this, get that rough estimate out. And that's a baseline for you. And just round everything up. Just keep it simple. Like this is something you should be able to do in an afternoon. If it's more than that, then it's probably you're creating a lot more work for yourself, and you're probably not going to keep up with it. But you just need a snapshot to start with. When you do that, automatically you're going to see things that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. If I guess this is a side note as well, if you don't have a separate business bank account, that's step one. Actually, do that right now. Like to pause the episode, get a separate bank account. It's going to make your life so much easier for 1,000 different reasons. So business bank account, and then know the numbers. And from there, you can then find a system that works. You can use the traditional Profit First system with all your different bank accounts to separate everything and transfer. And a lot of people find that to be really easy. And the physical separation is very appealing. There are some alternates on that. I do need to put out the disclaimer that I am not a certified Profit First professional because I don't follow the entirety of the system. I prefer an adapted, inspired by Profit First approach. So just putting that out there. If you want the full system, read the book and find a Profit First professional, and it's fantastic. It's really great for a lot of people. But you can do the bank account system. You could do a lot of online banks have kind of like a virtual envelope or subcategory or bucket feature where you can mimic it. So you could do that. I use a budgeting tool called YNAB. YNAB. It stands for You Need a Budget. And I will, as much as I love Profit First, if I had to have one, it would be YNAB. Like I love YNAB. And I won't go on a whole tangent about it, but just trust me, it's fantastic and it's the best. And there's no other budgeting app like it. I've looked. That is a great system that would help you get started right away. And even just looking on their homepage, you'll see what makes them different and why it works. That would be very, very helpful for getting this out of your head and getting started on something. And then moving forward, you can track a little bit more diligently, get more specific numbers, adjust the plan as you start to get more clarity on what is real for you, your life, your business, and all of that. But what's most important is that you can start today. So you get some semblance of clarity on what the situation is, and then you just move forward with an open mind, being kind to yourself, being willing to be flexible, being conservative, saving more than you think you need to save. The benefit of saving is that the money is there if you end up needing it, right? Versus if you send it out somewhere else, you can't get it back. So it doesn't have to be that scary to try and save more money than you think you can. And you might surprise yourself, right? So all of those things come from that initial step of one, separate business bank account, two, getting the numbers out of your head in somewhere where you can see them, process them, work with them, and you'll make better decisions from that point forward. Obviously, that's put very simply. There's a lot more to money management behaviors and systems than that, but that is definitely where I would send someone to start focusing on.
Wow, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for that, Katie. So just to recap, Katie said, open your business bank account if you haven't done that already. Get the numbers out of your head. Start very simple, just maybe 1 month of bank statement, see all the things you spend on. She also spoke about the YNAB app, and just start with those 3 things, and you can now transition from there to do all the other complicated stuff. Thank you so much, Katie. This has been so helpful. I've learned a lot just listening to you. And I know that those listening are also learning so much. So how can my listeners connect with you if they want to learn more about managing their money as online business owners? How can they connect with you?
So I do have an Instagram. It's been a little dry this last year. I had a baby a year ago, so I've been figuring life out again. But I will be returning there, and I am there if anyone wants to message me on Instagram at katie.morewithmoney. And then there's my website with blog posts that pretty much everything we've talked about. I have more extensive content on these topics over there. And then for a lot of the more like calculation stuff, like I mentioned, I have a spreadsheet resource, like a bundle of stuff called the CFO Starter Kit. And that will be a really great help for everything that we just talked about as far as getting things out of your head, figuring
Right.
out your allocations and stuff like that. And it's completely free. And that will also put you on an email list, of course, where I will share anything else that is in the works, anything else that will benefit you, stuff like that. So those are, the typical traditional spaces to find me.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing about the free CFO starter kit. Can you talk a little bit about the starter kit and what resources are in there and anything else that is coming up new for you?
Sure. So in the kit, there's a bunch. I don't remember.
That's
There
fine.
is there's like a financial tracker that allows you to mimic the Profit First system. So inspired by Profit First. Um, Not the traditional system. I do recommend reading the book, but there is a tracker in there that will help you to sort of practice that. There's a calculator in there that will help you figure out not just the ideal percentages of, profit, taxes, owner's pay, which for taxes, I do recommend having an accountant as much as I bashed accountants in this call. They're very helpful for taxes. You do want to have one for that.
Right.
But it's a calculator that will help you figure out the ideals for that, as well as where you are now, and what's realistic for you right now. So that question of how do I figure out how much I can pay myself while my business still needs money, that calculator will help you do that. It's just a lot of reverse engineering stuff, but it'll simplify the process. There's some there's a little mini bookkeeping tracker in there too, since money
Right.
management budgeting is a little bit different from bookkeeping, so you can kind of do both in there. There's a tool for sort of mapping out future cash flows. Anyone who follows me knows that for me, budgeting and estimating future income are two separate tasks. And so that allows you to do both. And then a growth tracker for like seeing how things grow over time. So there's a bunch of little things in that resource. And then as far as just other things that are in the works that I'm working on, I have been working on redoing my course offerings. I've learned a lot in the last couple of years since I made my previous one. So I've taken those down, but I have bunches in the works, especially one specifically focused on creating a sustainable, easy to use, personalized money management system for yourself. So everything we talked about is the course that I'm currently working on, and I'm hoping will be here in the new year if my
Yay.
child's nap schedule allows, which it currently does not, but we're working on it.
We're working on it. Thank you so much, Katie. It has been an amazing time just talking with you, learning about money management. I will link everything Katie said in the podcast description. You will see her Instagram handle, her website, a link to the free CFO Starter Kit. And when you get to our website, you will see the courses she talked about that she's launching soon. So please connect with Katie. Let's learn how to be better money managers in our online service-based businesses. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you learned something new and you were encouraged to take action. If so, will you stop right now and share this episode with someone so they can get the help you just got? I would also love it if you can leave a review for this podcast on Apple Podcast or the podcast app you're using to listen. This is the number one way I know you're getting value from the content on this podcast. Until next time, always remember you have all you need to start that business. So keep listening for more episodes. I'll meet you here next week.